Hey everybody, I'm back with the Michael Cohen book, Disloyal. The true story of the former personal attorney to Donald J. Trump. Forgot my microphone again. We are on chapter 17, and it's called The Conviction Machine. This is the book we're doing, and this is a review of chapter 17, okay? It's a short chapter. We'll be able to get through this. Chapter 18. And probably the epilogue all in this one sitting. Okay, so also I want to say I have so many books that I really don't have any room for them. So what I'm going to do is I am going to have a little lottery drawing, or whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to send this book to the lucky winner, as well as Stephanie Wolkoff's book. But you have to be a subscriber, okay? And I think I'm going to figure out how to do this on my community page. You have to sign up. You've got to be a subscriber, and you could be the winner of this lovely first edition book by Michael Cohen, okay? Okay, so let's get to the rest of it. Okay, so when we left off, Michael had never spoken to Trump since he told Michael he had his back, because Trump's a liar. So so chapter 17, the conviction machine. Trump continues to put distance between him and Michael. He says Michael isn't even a real lawyer. He's a low-level PR guy. And he also says, as he was sitting in prison, he realized there was no way that Donald Trump didn't know in advance that the raid was going to take place, because he is the chief of, he's the big guy. He's over the Department of Justice. He's a chief law enforcement officer, and there's no way Trump didn't know that but I'll tell you what Trump didn't know. Trump didn't know that there were recordings. That's what he didn't know. But he did know that Michael was going to be raided. He knew it. Okay, so then he was collaborating with Trump. Let's see. Okay, so they entered into a joint defense agreement with Trump, Jared, Ivanka, and they all collaborated using Michael's attorney, Stephen Ryan. But Trump stiffed him. Trump stiffed Michael on the legal fees. He said he was going to pay. So Michael had already tested to Congress for the first time, and he said he lied and lied and lied, and it was because that's what the Trumps wanted him to do. So he did it. And then and he believed that the most powerful person in the world was going to have his back. He believed him at this point, but he knew he was in trouble when Trump stopped paying his attorney. So apparently he started paying his attorney, and then he stopped. What, Trump is a scumbag, isn't he? So he has outstanding legal fees of more than $1 million. And there was a lot of documents to review to ensure that nothing was going to hurt Trump or his family. They didn't want any of that to come out. So he kept believing that Trump would stay loyal to him and at least pay the legal bills. But now Michael's lawyer says he couldn't, if it goes forward, and he gets indicted or criminally charged, he can't represent him because he wasn't a criminal attorney. So he engaged a new guy, Guy Petrillo. He used to work at the Southern District, so he knew he would know what the heck was going on. So there's a term I've never heard before. Queen for a day is a term used for a sit-down with federal prosecutors. They kept saying, we're not ready yet. So finally, Michael got fed up because, you can imagine 4 months goes by and nothing has happened. They have all this information and nothing's happened. So finally, Michael calls his attorney and he says, you write them a letter and tell them I want to talk to them. So it ended up that Petrillo was able to go talk to him, but Michael was not. And so when Petrillo came out of the meeting, he said that things didn't go well and they wanted him to plead guilty to tax evasion, okay? And tax evasion, lying to Congress, and misrepresentation to a bank. And they wanted him to plead guilty on Monday. Well, they changed it to Tuesday because Tuesday is the better news day. Guess whose idea that probably was? Trump wanted everybody in the world to see Michael be arrested. So anyway, if he refused on Monday, they're going to file an 85-page indictment, and they're going to drag you out of your house and on national television, and they're also going to indict your wife. And so he's like, tax evasion? Where the fuck does that come from? He had an accountant. He paid his taxes every year, blah, blah, blah. Turns out, well, I'll get to that part. So he had no clue that, why he was getting charged with tax evasion. He had never been audited and had never received a single letter from the IRS. And his lawyer's like, I know. So they went and they said he was definitely going to be indicted unless I was prepared to plead guilty. And he said he kept asking over and over why he was facing these charges. He was a legitimate local businessman who had never been in trouble. He followed the letter of the law. He only dealt with respectable banks and financial institutions, and the government was saying that he evaded paying taxes, which he was sure he had not. Okay, so at this point, Southern District froze and moved for forfeiture of all of his assets, which were $50 million. He forfeited forfeiture of all of my assets to the tune of more than $58 million. And so if he wanted to proceed, he needed to immediately wire money to Petrillo's office to cover his fees. And Petrillo told him he needed to reach out to his friends and try to borrow several million dollars, okay? His lawyer said apparently there was allegedly unreported income from his New York City taxi medallions, as well as interest on a loan that he had made to a private individual, Stormy Daniels. Okay, so he'd given all these records to his accountant, and that was the accountant's job to, keep all that straight, he believed. So now his wife is crying, and he's crying, and his lawyer is telling him that they intend to convict him. So, and he also issues this warning: if they want you, if the federal prosecutors want to get you, they will. He says no one reading the book should think for a second they're immune. And so he says he's not going to let anything happen to Laura, that he is going to plead guilty because there's no way he's going to let anything happen to Laura. And so he knew the Southern District would be ruthless and that they would stop at nothing. And, of course, they're a federal office under William Barr, who works for Trump. He also said he would face significant monetary penalties if. His lawyer said it was unlikely that he would go to prison, but he would have a lot of monetary penalties. So he made up his mind to plead, and his lawyer called him later and said that the IRS thing has an error. It was an error. But it turns out that his accountant, the businessman managing the taxi medallions, his name was Gene Friedman, had defrauded hundreds of medallion owners, as well as the city of New York for more than $20 million. He was facing serious prison time, and he testified against Michael. And so, of course, your CPA or your accountant is not responsible for your taxes. You sign those tax forms. You are responsible for them. And if he cheats, that guy doesn't get in trouble if he sets you up and pleads against, testifies against you. So that's what happened. He did. The accountant did the crime, and Michael got in trouble for it. So anyway, so there's better. The plea was moved to Tuesday because of better media coverage. And so then Petrillo, the lawyer, gave Michael some stuff that he was supposed to read word by word when he was in court. And at this point, the 3 counts had turned into 8 counts. And it was because of, instead of one tax charge that they had charged for 2012, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So that's 5 counts plus added Stormy Daniels' payment to Karen McDougal's payment, and campaign finance fraud and misrepresenting to the bank about the use of the money. But that isn't right, because he actually didn't lie to the bank, because the bank never asked him what the money was for. It was a line of credit. He took it out of a line of credit. Now there's 8 counts. And that's their offer. And so he took responsibility for all the counts, and he was to return in 60 days for sentencing. Then Michael's still thinking, that he is not going to have to do any time, that he'll have to pay a lot of legal fees. But the judge gave him 36 months. Okay, so now we're on to Chapter 18, Otisville Federal Satellite Camp. So on May 6th, he drove up to Otisville Satellite Camp, where they took his photograph, fingerprinted him, stripped him naked, give him prison clothes, including socks and underwear. And this is a low security camp, okay? Half of it was filled with Jews. They had kosher diets. They observed Sabbath dinner on Friday. It's all white-collar crime. Accountants, doctors, lawyers, bankers, Wall Street tycoons, they're all in there, So even Governor Andrew Cuomo's longtime chief of staff was there. And Michael Sorrentino, I don't know who he is, but he's from the Jersey Shore. Dean Skelos, the former Senate Majority Leader in New York, he was there too. So he got 300 minutes a month of phone calls, and he'd never been away from his wife and kids before, and so that's 10 minutes a day. So there was a Sabbath dinner every Friday night when he went to that. But he also developed hypertension problems, and he was hospitalized twice while in prison, and the guards were there 24/7, two prison officers. And this is why eventually this was eventually the basis for why he got out of prison early when COVID came along, okay? But first he had to go through what he calls the William Barr Department of Justice Kangaroo Court. So before any of those guys were let out of prison, they had to spend 2 weeks in solitary, okay? And because prison was like a petri dish for COVID, they had to make sure they weren't letting the virus out. And then so then the date got closer and closer, and Bill Barr changed the criteria for his release, and 70 inmates were returned to solitary. And he said it felt like Barr's amendment of all these rules was about him, about Michael, okay? So Michael really thought that the president wanted him dead. And also a lot of guards were Trump supporters, so they would bully him. Which is amounted to psychological torture. He was the last prisoner of those 70 people released. And he was in solitary for 35 days, and he only got let out of the cell for 30 minutes a day. Okay, so news leaked that he was writing this book, and his lawyer was served with a cease and desist letter from the Trump organization. And the letter said that he had signed an NDA, which I doubt that he did, I don't know. And that prevented him from writing this book. And it also said he was forbidden by attorney-client privilege to write the book. So now he's writing from his apartment. He's out with an ankle bracelet, right? And let's see. He wants us to remember that of what he testified the second time he was in Congress, that there is a serious threat that Donald Trump will not leave office easily, and that there is a real chance of not having a peaceful transition. And he said when Trump jokes about running in 2024, he's not joking, because Trump never jokes. And he said, you all now have the information that you need to make your decision on who you're going to vote for in November. And that's the end. Now, the epilogue is retaliation, okay? So, so he has to report to the probation guy, okay, on July 9th, where he's going to get his ankle bracelet. Until then, he really, there wasn't any reason why he couldn't go out to dinner, so he did. He went out to dinner, and a picture was taken of him. It was like, you call this hard time? Well, so that's what had happened. But so he went to the federal courthouse. Supposedly, it was a technicality, which changed the terms of his release from Otisville, and changed the terms of his COVID-related release from Otisville to furlough, home confinement. And the only difference would be that he would wear an ankle bracelet and he had to stay home, okay? So earlier that week he talked to his probation officer, and he was supposed to report at a halfway house. And then, but they changed the rules. And they said that now they wanted to come to his apartment to do the paperwork and install an ankle bracelet. 2 days after that, they said he was to report to the federal courthouse. And it kept getting weirder and weirder. So let's see. He wanted to know why he was being treated differently. And his probation officer said it was just a random coincidence. Okay, so Michael says, I hope I'll be able to continue to write my book. And the probation officer said, we encourage you to do so. So anyway, a few days before he was supposed to go, a few days before, this is when he didn't have an ankle bracelet. He wasn't confined to his house, and he went out to dinner, and so that was in the paper. Okay, so then he hadn't broken the terms, okay, because at that point the furlough hadn't been put into place. He was not in breach of the confinement by dining out, as many people have said. It was not a breach. Okay, so and also this was posted by the Post owner, of course, Rupert Murdoch, who is Trump's buddy. But so he was ambushed. So then Jake, the the next morning, took him down to the federal courthouse, and he took a childhood friend with him who was also an attorney. And Michael wanted him there because the way that this stuff had been moving around and all this kind of stuff, Michael needed an attorney with him. This attorney didn't practice criminal law, but he took him because he was an attorney. So there were 8 provisions that, let's see, 2-page document of the terms to change to home confinement, and he was to sign it, okay? And so the very first one says that he couldn't have any kind of interaction with the media, including print, TV, film, books, or any other kind of media or news. And he couldn't be on social media. He needed a requirement that Michael was to tell his friends and family that they are not to post on his behalf and they are not to give interviews. 21 minutes, okay. And so that was number 1. And Michael said, no, and he also said it looked like it had been written by a 3rd grader. I don't know where to start. The first term is overbroad and it violates the First Amendment rights. And so then his lawyer interrupted and he said, a person can't force his friends not to talk. That's you can't force your family not to talk to the press. So they said, okay, well, we'll take it back and we'll see if we can bring this, into a better paragraph or whatever. So Michael said he told him, tell William Barr I said hi, because he said it looked like it was written by him. So anyway, so then they waited in the waiting room for these guys to go rewrite the paragraph, and this was the same morning that Cy Vance had announced that the Supreme Court had ruled 7-2 that the president had absolutely no right to refuse to disclose his financial records. Okay. And the prosecutors were looking into fraud charges, the same things that Michael had been convicted of, okay? So even Brett Kavanaugh said, no one is above the law. So then Trump's talking about the witch hunt. I won the Mueller witch hunt. No, he didn't. At this point, Barr also tried to fire the United States attorney for the SDNY, and he refused to leave because Barr wanted to set up somebody in there who was a golf buddy of the president and was not even an attorney. He was a lackey. And Berman only relented after an experienced independent replacement prosecutor was put in there. But Trump wanted that done because he knew that if he had his guy in a federal, in the SDNY, that he could actually pardon himself. So, Trump knows that he is guilty of the same crime that that resulted in Michael's convictions. But Trump will also almost certainly face the New York State criminal charges. And he will likely be convicted on both federal and state charges and face serious prison time. I'm just saying, he's a bad guy. Okay, so then they're sitting there. They're sitting there in that room waiting for about an hour and a half, and 3 U.S. Marshals come in and say, "Mr. Cohen, please stand up." And they had handcuffs and shackles. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You refused to sign the document." He said, "I never refused to sign the document. We were waiting for waiting for it to be revised. They said they were going to revise it." And he said, "It's out of our hands now." And so they took him back to prison in upstate New York. And with his heart condition and his respiratory health issues, he was subject to getting COVID-19. So he was never actually given the chance to sign the home confinement document. He was imprisoned because he was imprisoned again because he refused to sign away his First Amendment rights. Now, he said it was a surprise attack. So then his wife found a former prosecutor, true criminal lawyer. Her name, I think it's a woman, Danya Perry. She filed a writ of habeas corpus and an emergency restraining order. And 10 days later, the judge said he dismissed the idea that Michael had been combative about signing the home furlough thing, and that he said that he had never seen a clause like that that matched that first provision in what Michael was signing. And he also said that he found that the purpose of transferring Mr. Cohen from furlough to home confinement to jail is retaliatory. So it was done to retaliate about his book by Trump and Barr. So that he said, no, the president, as I told you in the beginning of the book, the president doesn't want you to read my story. And now I have actual proof how desperate they are and would prevent the world from hearing this story about the real Donald Trump. And it's signed Michael Cohen, New York, August 2020. And then the rest of the book, there's some pictures in here. The rest of the book, let's see here. 370 to 432, so 62 pages or so are all, look, they're all court documents. I'm not going to go through all these, and I can't read upside down. So sentencing things. So whoever gets this book can read these if they want to. And then there's also a section where there are all these tweets. This is the Steele dossier, by the way. Some things are retracted. And then there are pictures and tweets. Tweets from Rona Graff, Randy Glasson, Donald Trump, Trump tweets, Trump. And then there's a couple of pictures. So this is Trump with Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen. This is our buddy Jerry Falwell and his lovely wife with Donald Trump and Mike Cohen. So that's it, you guys. We finished the book. 28 minutes. Woohoo! Like I said, I have underlined some of this stuff, but I did it with my trusty pencil. So I'm going to erase this book, and I am going to figure out how to do the community page, and figure out how to do a drawing. So I'll figure it out, and then I'll tell you what the date of the drawing is, and you guys have to sign in or some way I'll figure. But you have to be a subscriber or I'm not going to send you the book, okay? So now's the time to subscribe. Hit the bell, hit the like, leave a comment, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. I'm going to go start on Rage now.